Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. So let's talk about that. The Glory Day operating account, the church operating account. There are a variety of sources for income, I'll call it that in a business sense, to this particular account, and they're depicted here. One of those is the EMR pledges that we solicit through the congregation, through EMR in October time frame, and that everybody fills out, hopefully on a weekly basis, or however you do that if you want to do it through automatic debits and things like that. But that's this account right here, the EMR, and it's pledged. So what does pledge mean? Pledge means exactly that, like you do when you pledge for a fraternity. You say that I want to, and they say, well, we want you to, and we have some kind of agreement. And you know that you have certain responsibilities. That's what pledging is all about. It helps you focus on whether you think it's important or not, and whether you think it's important enough to actually make a commitment. That's what pledging is. And pledging actually, I believe, helps people better focus on what their priorities are. I'm not saying that these people who are unpledged are any less heartfelt in making their contribution. It's just that I think some people pledge because they feel it strengthens their commitment, and other people don't because maybe they just don't think it's that big a deal. So there's nothing wrong with somebody who doesn't pledge. I want to be clear on that. And I'm not telling people not to give. That's a big source. So you've got EMR pledged, you've got unpledged. What is unpledged? Any given Sunday, people drop the cash in there. It's not accounted for. I don't know who gave me that. It may have been a pledge person that did that, but I'll never know that. But it is somebody that still feels dedicated to the church and they provide something to the work of God. It could also be stock, and it could also be life insurance. If somebody wants to hand over stock to Rick Graves and the church to the glory of God, they can do that at any time. And we will take that and manipulate it and manage it and bring it back into the operating budget. If someone wants to bequeath as a beneficiary of Glory Day, they can do that at any time. When they pass away, their life insurance would come to Glory Day and we would use that. So those are what I categorize as unpledged. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. Okay, and then the school. There was a portion of the $700,000+ of annual operating budget for the church that comes from the school. That portion is about 30%. That's a pretty big number. 30% of our operating budget for the church comes from the school in the form of cost sharings, pastoral salaries, lights and heat, copier, streets maintenance. You need the parking lot repaved. School is going to, school probably pays all of that, but there's a percentage worked out, and the school provides a great deal of the kind of sustainment and operating capabilities that we think are all church. And if you're not aware of that, I hope you take that away as something significant. Then, obviously, you have the credit lines. Now, I put the credit lines up here. From the standpoint of the operating account, our credit lines function as the cash flow. Unlike the school that has a reserve, the church really does not have a reserve. We use the credit lines as our cash flow. At any given time, we may extract out of there to make sure that we pay a bill pending receipts in terms of offerings from the congregation. But typically, it's an in-out type thing. And I don't really know where we're at in terms of numbers there, but I will tell you that that's something that we don't like to do, obviously, because then that's something that we have to pay back, and if we let it flow too long, there's interest there. And then for a period of time, in the 2010 budget and prior to that, Glory Day Ministries, Inc. was actually paying part of Pastor Bugg's salary. But again, where was that coming from? That was coming from a line of credit. There was no source for that. So when you look at it, this is kind of the complexion in terms of the composition of the operating account of Glory Day. Any questions on that? All right. So we're going to focus just on that piece. I'm drilling you down little by little. We're not going to talk about unpledged, school, GMI, credit lines. We're just going to look at the EMR pledges. All right, so in terms of EMR pledges 2010 to date, from the campaign that we ran in October, these are the numbers and how they look. The pledge to date is, as indicated there, 396, 568. If you want to do comparisons, because sometimes they are useful to do that, sometimes they aren't. But in this case, if we put it down, you can see that the prior year was 436. So if you only compared it to the prior year, you would see that from the prior year we're 40,000 off, or down about 9%. But I'm going to give you some other numbers and some notes on the next slide, which kind of tempers that, because being down 10% is a lot. I mean, it'll affect our operations, I'm sure. But there are some interesting dynamics about how that 10% occurred. And then in terms of the pledge amount, I think this is pretty important. The average pledge amount actually went up, didn't go down. For the people who pledged, they said, I need to be doing this, and I need to be doing this harder. I need to be doing it more. Now, it wasn't significant, but by the same token, it didn't go down significantly. It did not go down 10%. So that's kind of an interesting statistic. People who said, that's why I went back earlier and said pledges versus unpledged. Like people who pledge feel that they need to make a commitment, and it shows right there. And then the numbers, this is, it's not atypical, but to my mind it's a little bit less than we've had in previous years in terms of people who have actually pledged. And you'll see some statistics on the next page. But you got 160 who have pledged from the previous year, 177 pledged, and 17 were down, which means about 9 to 10%. So any questions on that? I've got some notes on the next page, which kind of gives you a different perspective. All right, let's go there. And we can go back if you need to. I'll go back a slide. Okay, so of those who pledged in 2009, so we're going back a year, and 2010, 63 were the same. 48 increased, and only 23 decreased. So the preponderance of people who are pledging are actually either maintaining or increasing. And there's a smaller percentage of people who are actually decreasing their pledge. There were 25 new pledges in 2010. That's healthy. That's pretty good. That's a pastor's class, potentially, when you think, or two pastor's classes, when you think about it. There are 39 who pledged in 2009 who have not pledged for 2010. Please get your pledges in, or let me know that you have made another decision on how to support Glory Day, or not. Or you may, it's kind of interesting. This category right here drives Rick Graves crazy when we ask him questions about what's going on here, because any given year, sometimes people slide between pledging and non-pledging. It doesn't mean that they're not giving. It just means that they're no longer accountable, if you will, in the pledge category. And so that makes it very difficult for us to kind of look ahead and forecast. And so that drives Rick crazy when we ask him, and he says, well, I don't know, they could basically have changed, and now they're going to give, but they're not pledged. And we have great discussions on that. Anyway.
Does that account for people who moved?
I'm going to talk about that. Yeah. In some cases, that is a big effect. And that's really down here. This one right here. Regarding that 40,000 decrease that you saw on the previous page, 5 pledge situations accounted for 33,000 of that. And as Ramona pointed out, 2 families were transferred. 1 lowered their pledge, and 2 deaths. We had some folks who were significant contributors die in 2009. And you could name them in your head, at least one of them. And so that's kind of telling, because what that tells me is that even though we were down 10%, there were rational reasons for being down 10%. Now, obviously, okay, so where did the other 7,000 come from? I think the other 7,000 came from, there were some people who just decided not to pledge. And I don't know why. Well, I can only assume that there's something that might be going on that they're not happy about. And then there are some who might be affected financially and really, felt some anxiety to state a pledge that perhaps they couldn't fulfill. So I mean, there are a lot of dynamics there. I don't know how to put that, but I would say that what we have to think of is the delta really that we're looking at is $7,000, and $7,000 could be for a variety of reasons. It could be for people who didn't have an issue with the church, people who didn't pledge, who just have some anxiety in their personal lives.